Marcus Rodriguez wiped the grease from his hands with a worn blue rag, the same ritual he'd performed thousands of times over the past 15 years. The garage smelled of motor oil, brake fluid, and the lingering scent of burnt coffee from the pot that had been brewing since dawn. Outside, the desert sun beat down mercilessly on the small town of Barstow, California, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets were as rare as rain. "Hey Marcus, you got time to look at my transmission?" called out Jim Patterson, a local rancher whose pickup truck had seen better decades. "She's slipping something fierce." Marcus nodded, pulling himself out from under the hood of a stubborn Chevy that had been giving him trouble all morning. At 42, he moved with the deliberate precision of a man who understood machinery in ways that went beyond textbooks or training manuals. His weathered hands told stories of countless repairs, emergency fixes on remote highways, and the quiet satisfaction that came from bringing dead engines back to life. The townspeople of Barstow saw Marcus as their reliable mechanic, the guy who could fix anything with wheels and an engine. They appreciated his fair prices, his honest assessments, and the way he never made them feel foolish for not understanding what was wrong with their vehicles. Children would sometimes gather around his garage, watching wide-eyed as he diagnosed problems that seemed impossible to solve, pulling apart complex machinery with the confidence of someone reading a favorite book. What they didn't know was that Marcus Rodriguez carried within him a past that would have shattered their simple perception of the quiet man who fixed their cars. The truth was, Marcus had once commanded some of the most sophisticated flying machines ever created. For 12 years, he had been Captain Marcus Rodriguez, Apache helicopter pilot, with over 2,000 flight hours in some of the world's most dangerous airspace. He had flown missions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and several classified operations that would remain buried in military files forever. His hands, now stained with automotive grease, had once danced across the controls of a $35 million aircraft capable of delivering precision strikes from miles away. But that was a lifetime ago, a chapter he had deliberately closed when he mustered out of the Army in 2009. The transition from military life to civilian existence had been harder than any mission he'd ever flown. The constant adrenaline, the brotherhood, the sense of purpose that came with serving something greater than himself, all of it had evaporated the day he hung up his uniform. Marcus had chosen Barstow specifically because it was unremarkable, a place where he could disappear into the rhythm of ordinary life. He bought the garage from an elderly mechanic named Pete Kowalski, who had been looking to retire for years. The transition felt natural. Both jobs involved understanding complex machines, diagnosing problems, and finding solutions under pressure. The skills translated better than he had expected. The garage became his sanctuary. Unlike the Apache, where every system was monitored, every flight logged, every decision scrutinized by commanders and mission planners, here he was accountable only to himself and his customers. If Mrs. Henderson's Buick needed a new alternator, there were no radio checks, no coordination with ground control, no split-second decisions that could mean life or death for his crew. Years passed in comfortable anonymity. Marcus developed a routine that suited him perfectly. He opened the garage at 7 each morning, worked steadily until 6 in the evening, and spent his evenings reading technical manuals or watching baseball on the small television in his apartment above the shop. Weekends brought different challenges: classic car restorations for the few residents who could afford such luxuries, or emergency calls from stranded motorists on Highway 15. The closest he came to his former life was the occasional military convoy that passed through town, heading to or from the Marine Corps Logistics Base 20 miles north. Sometimes the drivers would stop for fuel or minor repairs, and Marcus would catch glimpses of the young soldiers inside, their eager faces, pressed uniforms, and the particular alertness that came with active duty. He felt a familiar ache during these encounters, a longing for something he couldn't quite name. One scorching Thursday afternoon in July, everything changed. Marcus was installing a new radiator in a Ford Explorer when he heard the distinctive sound that made his blood freeze. The deep, rhythmic thumping was unmistakable. Helicopter rotors, multiple aircraft, flying low and fast. He dropped his tools and stepped outside, shielding his eyes against the brilliant sun. 3 Apache helicopters swept across the valley, their sleek forms cutting through the heat shimmer like mechanical predators. Even at a distance, Marcus could identify them immediately. H-64D longbows, the same variant he had flown countless times. They were flying a standard patrol formation, maintaining proper interval and altitude for terrain following in hostile territory. His chest tightened as memories flooded back. The familiar vibration of the aircraft, the constant chatter of radio communications, the weight of responsibility that came with commanding such devastating firepower. He remembered the trust his gunner had placed in him, the way they had become extensions of each other during long missions, anticipating each other's thoughts and reactions. "Never seen those around here before," commented Sally Martinez, who ran the diner next door. She had stepped outside to watch the impressive display, her hand shading her eyes. "Military exercises, maybe?" Marcus nodded absently, but his mind was already working through possibilities. The flight path was wrong for a routine training mission from the Marine base. These aircraft were flying with purpose, not the relaxed patterns of peacetime exercises. Something was happening. That evening, as Marcus closed the garage and headed upstairs to his apartment, he couldn't shake the feeling that his carefully constructed, peaceful life was about to change. The appearance of the Apaches felt like more than coincidence. It felt like a message from his past, a reminder of who he used to be before he became just a mechanic. He made dinner, a simple meal of grilled chicken and vegetables, and tried to focus on the evening news. But his attention kept drifting to the window, where he could still hear the faint echo of rotor blades in his memory. For 15 years, he had successfully buried Captain Rodriguez beneath the calm, methodical persona of Marcus the mechanic. Tonight, for the first time since leaving the military, he found himself wondering if that burial had been permanent, or if some part of him had simply been waiting for the right moment to resurface. The phone rang just after 9 o'clock, interrupting his thoughts. The number was unfamiliar, but something about the timing made his heart race. "Rodriguez Automotive," he answered, using his standard greeting even though the garage was officially closed. "Marcus Rodriguez?" The voice was crisp, professional, with a particular cadence that Marcus recognized immediately as military. "Speaking. This is Colonel Sarah Chun, United States Army Aviation Command. I apologize for calling so late, but I need to speak with you about a matter of national importance. Are you the Marcus Rodriguez who served as an Apache pilot from 1997 to 2009? Marcus felt the world tilt slightly. After 15 years of silence, his past had found him in a single phone call. He gripped the receiver tighter, his mind already racing through the implications. "Yes, Colonel. That's me. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm going to be direct. We have a situation that requires your specific expertise. I can't discuss details over an unsecured line, but I'll be in Barstow tomorrow morning. Can you meet me at 0800 hours? Marcus looked around his simple apartment, at the life he had built one day at a time, one repaired engine at a time. Everything felt suddenly fragile, as if a strong wind might blow it all away. "Colonel, I've been out of the service for 15 years. I'm just a mechanic now." There was a pause, and when Colonel Chin spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made Marcus straighten unconsciously. "Mr. Rodriguez, 3 days ago, a terrorist organization seized control of a military installation in Nevada. They have hostages, advanced weaponry, and what appears to be inside knowledge of our security protocols. We've tried conventional approaches, but the situation is deteriorating rapidly. We need someone with your particular combination of skills, someone who understands both Apache systems and can think outside traditional military doctrine." Marcus closed his eyes, feeling the pull of his former life like gravity. "Why me, Colonel? There are thousands of active pilots who are more current than I am." "Because, Mr. Rodriguez, according to your service record, you were never just anything. You were one of the finest pilots we've ever trained, and, more importantly, you were one of the most innovative tactical thinkers in Apache aviation history. We need that innovation now." As Marcus hung up the phone 20 minutes later, he stood at his window looking out at the quiet streets of Barstow. Tomorrow, he would learn whether 15 years of fixing cars had dulled the sharp edge that had once made him one of the Army's most trusted pilots. The peaceful life he had built was about to be tested in ways he had never imagined. The mechanic's secret was about to become the nation's hope. Marcus barely slept that night. He lay in his narrow bed, staring at the ceiling while memories he had spent 15 years suppressing came flooding back with startling clarity. The weight of night vision goggles, the subtle vibrations that told him everything about his aircraft's condition, the trust in his gunner's voice during dangerous missions. It all felt as immediate as if it had happened yesterday. At 5 in the morning, he gave up on sleep and made coffee, the same routine that had anchored his civilian life for over a decade. But today everything felt different. The familiar sounds of his garage seemed muted, as if they belonged to someone else's life. He found himself unconsciously checking the sky, listening for the sound of approaching aircraft. Colonel Chun arrived precisely at 8 o'clock, driving a nondescript sedan that screamed government issue. Marcus watched from his office window as she stepped out, a woman in her mid-40s with the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her civilian clothes couldn't disguise the military posture, the way she scanned her surroundings before approaching the garage. "Mr. Rodriguez?" She extended a firm handshake. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me." Marcus gestured toward his small office, clearing automotive magazines from a folding chair. "Coffee, please." Colonel Chin settled into the chair with the efficient movements of someone whose time was measured in missions rather than hours. "I know this is unusual, reaching out to you after so many years." 15 years, for months, and 12 days. Marcus said automatically, then caught himself. "Not that I'm counting." Colonel Chin smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Your service record makes fascinating reading, Mr. Rodriguez. 87 combat missions, 0 aircraft losses, 3 distinguished flying crosses, and a reputation for what your commanders called creative tactical solutions. There's also mention of several classified operations that I don't have clearance to discuss." Marcus poured coffee into 2 mismatched mugs, buying time to organize his thoughts. "That was a long time ago, Colonel. I'm not sure what use any of that history is to you now. Let me paint you a picture of our current situation." Colonel Chin opened a slim briefcase and withdrew several photographs. "This is Creech Air Force Base, Nevada. 72 hours ago, a group calling themselves the Desert Liberation Front penetrated the base's perimeter and seized control of the primary operations center." The first photograph showed a sprawling military installation in the Nevada desert, rows of hangars and support buildings arranged with military precision. Marcus recognized the layout immediately. Creech was where the Air Force conducted much of its drone operations, controlling unmanned aircraft across multiple theaters of operation. "How many hostages?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer would be complicated. 43 military personnel, including 12 drone pilots, and their support crews. But that's not the worst part. Colonel Chun laid out additional photographs showing the operations center's interior. These terrorists didn't just seize the building. They've taken operational control of 6 MQ-9 Reaper drones currently on active missions overseas. Marcus felt ice form in his stomach. "They're controlling our drones?" "Not yet, but they have the capability. We've managed to maintain overriding control from alternate facilities, but they're learning the systems rapidly. Intelligence suggests they have inside help, someone with detailed knowledge of our operational protocols." The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Drone operations were the backbone of modern military strategy, providing surveillance and strike capabilities without risking human pilots. If terrorists could seize control of even one Reaper drone, the potential for catastrophe was enormous. "What about ground assault?" Marcus asked. "Surely you have special operations teams that can handle this." Colonel Chin's expression darkened. "We've tried. 3 separate assault attempts have failed. The terrorists have positioned themselves perfectly within the operations center, using the hostages as human shields while maintaining control of the facility's defensive systems. They've also demonstrated knowledge of our tactical approaches that suggests extensive inside intelligence." She laid out a tactical map of the base, marked with various approach routes and defensive positions. "Every time we've attempted entry, they've anticipated our moves. It's as if they know our playbook better than we do." Marcus studied the map, his tactical mind automatically analyzing the situation. "So you need something they won't anticipate. Something outside the conventional playbook." "Exactly. Which brings me to why I'm here." Colonel Chin leaned forward, her intensity palpable. "The operations center has one vulnerability that conventional ground forces can't exploit. The building's roof is reinforced against ground attack, but It was designed before the current threat environment. There's a section above the main control room that could potentially be breached from above. Marcus looked up from the map, understanding beginning to dawn. You want to insert a team through the roof. Not a team. A single operator. Someone who can rappel from a helicopter, breach the roof, neutralize the immediate threats around the hostages, and create enough confusion to allow our ground forces to successfully assault the building. The plan was audacious and dangerous, requiring precision flying in a hostile environment and split-second timing between air and ground forces. Marcus had executed similar operations during his military service, but those had been in foreign countries against enemies who didn't know American tactics inside and out. Colonel, I'm honored that you thought of me, but I haven't flown an Apache in 15 years. Military aviation has changed significantly since 2009. The systems, the protocols, the threat environment, everything is different now. Colonel Chin pulled out a tablet and showed him a video feed. This is live footage from our surveillance drones circling Creech. We've identified the terrorists' defensive positions, their movement patterns, and the location of the hostages. What we need is a pilot who can approach the target without being detected, deliver a single operator with surgical precision, and provide close air support during the subsequent ground assault. Marcus watched the video feed, his trained eye automatically analyzing the target area. Why not use special operations? They have pilots specifically trained for this kind of mission. Because this isn't just about flying, Mr. Rodriguez. Intelligence suggests that the terrorists have access to our current tactical databases. They know how our special operations units operate, what equipment they use, what their standard approaches are. We need someone who operates outside that predictable framework. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Your service record shows a pattern of unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Operation Desert Phoenix, the extraction from Firebase Cobra, the incident at the Kandahar pipeline. You consistently found ways to accomplish missions that others considered impossible. Marcus remembered those operations, the weight of responsibility, and the satisfaction of bringing his crews home safely against overwhelming odds. Those were different times, different circumstances. The circumstances change, but the principles remain the same. We need someone who can think creatively under pressure, someone who understands both the technical capabilities and limitations of our aircraft, and someone who won't be paralyzed by conventional thinking. Colonel Chin reached into her briefcase and withdrew a flight helmet, Apache pilot configuration, modified with the latest electronic systems. This is a current generation helmet display system. The basic principles are the same as what you trained on, but the capabilities have expanded dramatically. We can get you current on the new systems in less than 24 hours. Marcus held the helmet, feeling its familiar weight. The smell of the interior padding brought back memories of pre-flight checks, radio communications, and the focused calm that came with combat operations. Even if I could get current on the aircraft systems, there's the question of the operator you want me to deliver. I assume this person would need to be someone with very specific skills. Actually, Mr. Rodriguez, we were hoping you might handle that part of the mission yourself. Marcus looked up sharply. I'm a pilot, not a ground operative. Your record suggests otherwise. Advanced combat training, urban warfare certification, explosives handling, close quarters combat. Your personnel file reads like a special operations resume. Apparently, you took advantage of every advanced training opportunity the Army offered during your 12 years of service. It was true. Marcus had always been hungry for knowledge, for skills that might keep him and his crews alive in dangerous situations. During his years of service, he had completed training programs that most pilots never attempted, driven by a belief that versatility was the key to survival. The mission would be complex, but straightforward, Colonel Chun continued. Approach the target using terrain masking to avoid detection. Fast rope onto the roof of the operations center, breach the control room from above, neutralize immediate threats to the hostages, and hold position until ground forces arrive. Your aviation background means you understand the timing and coordination required better than most ground operatives. Marcus set the helmet on his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet street where Mrs. Patterson was walking her ancient golden retriever. Colonel, you're asking me to leave a life I've spent 15 years building. To risk everything I've worked for on a mission that could easily go wrong in a dozen different ways. I'm asking you to remember who you were before you became content fixing other people's problems. I'm asking Captain Rodriguez to come back, just for one mission. The title hit him like an electric shock. For 15 years, no one had called him captain. He had been Marcus, or Rodriguez, or simply the mechanic. The rank felt like putting on a uniform that still fit perfectly despite the passage of time. What kind of timeline are we talking about? The terrorists have given us 72 hours to withdraw all American forces from 3 Middle Eastern countries. That was yesterday morning. We have less than 48 hours before they start executing hostages, and our intelligence suggests they plan to use the captured drones for a coordinated attack on civilian targets. Marcus turned back to face Colonel Chun, seeing in her expression the same urgency he had once felt during wartime briefings. If I agree to this, and I'm not saying I will, what kind of support would I have? Full tactical support from Fort Carson, complete mission planning assistance, and whatever equipment modifications you require. We've already transported an Apache to Nellis Air Force Base for your use. It's been configured specifically for this mission profile. The weight of decision pressed down on Marcus like the desert heat. For 15 years, he had successfully convinced himself that his military service was behind him, that he could find fulfillment in the simple satisfaction of fixing broken engines and helping neighbors with their mechanical problems. But, sitting in his small office, holding an Apache pilot's helmet while discussing a mission that could save dozens of lives, he felt the pull of his former identity. I need time to think about this, he said finally. Colonel Chin stood and closed her briefcase. I understand, Mr. Rodriguez. But I should mention that we've run computer simulations of various assault scenarios. Without the kind of precise aerial insertion you're capable of, our success probability drops to less than 30%. With your participation, those odds improve to over 80%. She handed him a secure phone. When you're ready to decide, call the number programmed into this device. We can have transportation to Nellis within 2 hours of your call. After Colonel Chun left, Marcus sat alone in his garage office, surrounded by the tools and invoices that represented his civilian life. The secure phone lay on his desk like a challenge, daring him to pick it up and transform himself back into the person he used to be. Outside, he could hear the normal sounds of Barstow coming to life. Traffic on the highway, children playing, the everyday rhythm of a peaceful community. It was the life he had chosen, the life he had earned through years of deliberate anonymity. But 43 hostages were counting on someone to save them, even if they didn't know it yet. And somewhere in the Nevada desert, terrorists were preparing to use America's own weapons against innocent civilians. Marcus picked up the secure phone and began to dial. The military transport that picked up Marcus from a remote airstrip outside Barstow was a far cry from the commercial flights he had taken during his few civilian vacations. As the aircraft climbed toward cruising altitude, he found himself falling back into the familiar rhythm of military efficiency. Hurry up and wait, but be ready for anything. Sitting in the canvas seats surrounded by serious-faced personnel, Marcus felt like an imposter. These were active-duty soldiers, their uniforms crisp, their conversation peppered with current military terminology that had evolved since his service. He wore civilian clothes and carried a single duffel bag containing everything he thought he might need for what could be his final mission. Colonel Chin sat across from him, reviewing mission files on a tablet. The aircraft waiting for you at Nellis has been modified based on your service record preferences, she said without looking up. Chief Warrant Officer Peterson, who oversaw the modifications, said he's never seen such detailed pilot preferences in a personnel file. Marcus remembered Peterson, a legendary maintenance chief who had been responsible for keeping Apaches airworthy in some of the world's most challenging environments. Peterson's still active duty, retired, and recalled for this operation. When we told him we needed an Apache configured for Marcus Rodriguez, he volunteered to come out of retirement. Apparently, you two worked together in Afghanistan. The memory came flooding back. Peterson had been the maintenance chief responsible for Marcus's aircraft during a particularly dangerous deployment. They had developed an almost telepathic understanding of what modifications and adjustments would give Marcus the edge he needed for complex missions. Peterson had once spent 36 hours straight rebuilding an engine so Marcus could fly a medical evacuation mission that other pilots had deemed impossible. How much does Peterson know about this mission? Everything. He's part of your support team, along with Major Williams, your gunner. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. I don't need a gunner for this mission. The plan calls for precision insertion, not air-to-air combat. Colonel Chin looked up from her tablet. Major Williams volunteered specifically to fly with you. She's one of our best gunners, with over 400 combat hours. More importantly, she studied every piece of available footage from your previous missions. She says she understands your flying style better than most people understand their spouses. The transport began its descent toward Nellis, and Marcus watched the Nevada landscape scroll past through the small window. The desert looked much the same as it had during his training flights decades earlier, but everything else had changed. The military he was returning to operated with technologies and procedures that hadn't existed during his active service. Colonel, I need to ask you something directly. Why are you so confident that someone who hasn't flown in 15 years can pull this off? Colonel Chin closed her tablet and leaned forward. Because 3 days ago, when we were running out of conventional options, someone suggested consulting the archives for pilots who had successfully completed similar missions under impossible circumstances. Your name came up 17 times in different contexts: hostage rescues, precision insertions, operations where thinking outside established doctrine made the difference between success and catastrophe. She pulled out a file folder. Operation Desert Phoenix, 2007. You extracted a downed F-16 pilot from behind enemy lines using an insertion technique that the flight manual said was impossible. The after-action report credited your success to what they called innovative interpretation of aircraft capabilities. Marcus remembered that mission vividly. The pilot had been down in terrain that conventional rescue helicopters couldn't reach, surrounded by enemies who knew American rescue procedures. Marcus had used the Apache's superior maneuverability to approach from an unexpected direction, then employed a landing technique that pushed the aircraft to its absolute limits. Firebase Cobra, 2008. Colonel Chun continued. 47 soldiers trapped in an outpost that was being overrun. You provided close air support for 14 hours straight, then landed in a combat zone to evacuate wounded personnel. Your commanding officer wrote that you redefined the operational envelope of the AH-64 Apache. These memories carried weight that no amount of civilian success could match. Marcus had saved lives, accomplished missions that mattered in ways that went beyond personal satisfaction. Fixing cars was honest work, but it wasn't the same as bringing people home alive. Nellis Air Force Base looked exactly as Marcus remembered it, a sprawling complex of hangars, runways, and support buildings arranged with military precision in the harsh Nevada desert. But the aircraft he saw on the tarmac were different, more advanced than the machines he had trained on decades earlier. Chief Peterson was waiting at the helicopter hangar, his weathered face breaking into a wide grin when he saw Marcus approach. Captain Rodriguez, you haven't aged a day, you lying bastard. The embrace was immediate and genuine, the kind of greeting shared by people who had trusted each other with their lives. Peterson looked exactly the same except for additional gray in his hair and a few more lines around his eyes. Chief, I hear you came out of retirement just to work on my bird. Hell yes, I did. When they told me Marcus Rodriguez was flying again, I couldn't pass up the chance to get your aircraft ready. Besides, my wife was getting tired of me reorganizing the garage for the 3rd time this year. Peterson led Marcus toward a hangar where an Apache helicopter sat under bright work lights. This is an AH-64E Guardian, the newest variant in the Apache family. All the basic systems you remember, but with upgraded avionics, improved target acquisition, and enhanced survivability features. Marcus circled the aircraft, his trained eye automatically cataloging the modifications. The basic shape was familiar, but every system had been refined and improved. Talk me through the changes, Chief. For the next 2 hours, Peterson and a team of technicians walked Marcus through every modification, every system upgrade, every enhancement that had been incorporated since his last flight. The process felt like relearning a language he had once spoken fluently. The basic structure was familiar, but the vocabulary had expanded significantly. The fire control system is completely digital now, explained Sergeant Martinez, a young technician who looked barely old enough to drive. Target acquisition time has been reduced by 60%, and The system can track multiple targets simultaneously while maintaining firing solutions for all of them. Major Williams arrived just as Marcus was completing his systems review. She was younger than he had expected, probably early 30s, with the confident bearing of someone who had earned her position through skill rather than time and service. "Captain Rodriguez? I'm Major Sarah Williams, your gunner for this mission." Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. "I've studied every mission report from your service record. It's an honor to fly with you." Marcus felt the familiar weight of responsibility that came with being trusted by a crew member. "Major, I should warn you that I haven't flown in 15 years. The systems may be familiar, but my reflexes aren't what they used to be." Major Williams smiled. "Sir, I've been flying combat missions for 8 years. I've never seen anyone approach a target the way you did during the Firebase Cobra operation. The way you used terrain masking and tactical patience to maintain the element of surprise, that's not something you lose with time. That's instinct." The mission briefing took place in a secure conference room where detailed satellite imagery covered every wall. Marcus found himself surrounded by intelligence analysts, tactical planners, and special operations personnel, all of whom treated him with a deference that felt simultaneously flattering and overwhelming. "The target building is here," indicated Commander Rodriguez, the mission planner. 3-story concrete construction, reinforced roof, multiple entry points all covered by terrorist defensive positions. Intelligence indicates they have heavy weapons positioned to cover all conventional approach routes. Marcus studied the imagery, his tactical mind automatically analyzing approach angles, defensive positions, and potential complications. "What about air defenses? Do they have any surface-to-air capability?" "Limited. They appear to have several shoulder-fired missiles, but no sophisticated radar-guided systems. However, they've demonstrated knowledge of our standard flight patterns, so we're assuming they know how to anticipate conventional helicopter approaches." The plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its complexity. Marcus would approach the target using ultra-low-level flight, masked by terrain features to avoid detection until the final approach. At precisely 0347 hours, he would fast rope onto the roof of the operations center, breach the control room from above, neutralize immediate threats to the hostages, and hold position for exactly 4 minutes while ground forces assaulted the building from multiple directions. "For minutes," Marcus repeated. "That's not a lot of time to secure a room full of hostages and eliminate an unknown number of terrorists. Intelligence suggests there are no more than 3 terrorists in the control room itself. The majority of their force is positioned to repel ground assault. Your job is to create enough confusion and eliminate enough immediate threats that our ground forces can successfully breach the building." Major Williams leaned forward. "Sir, I'll be providing overwatch from the aircraft. We've identified firing positions that will allow me to support you without endangering the hostages. The new targeting system can distinguish between friendly and hostile targets even in low-light conditions." Marcus appreciated her confidence, but he remembered how quickly situations could deteriorate once the shooting started. "Major, once I'm on that roof, your priority is protecting the ground forces and maintaining our exit route. Don't take unnecessary risks trying to support me in the building." "Understood, sir. But I should mention that the new communication systems allow real-time video sharing between ground personnel and air support. I'll be able to see everything you see and provide tactical information as the situation develops." The technology was impressive, but Marcus had learned long ago that technology was only as good as the people using it. "What kind of backup do we have if things go wrong?" Commander Rodriguez indicated positions on the tactical map. Full special operations teams standing by at 3 different locations, medical evacuation helicopters on standby, and fast jets available for close air support if the situation escalates beyond helicopter capabilities. It was comprehensive planning, the kind of multi-layered support structure that the military had perfected over decades of complex operations. But Marcus remembered that even the best plans rarely survived contact with the enemy unchanged. That evening, Marcus stood in his temporary quarters at Nellis, looking at the flight suit that had been tailored to fit him. 15 years ago, putting on this uniform had been as natural as breathing. Tonight, it felt like assuming someone else's identity. The secure phone rang just after midnight. "Rodriguez. Captain, this is Colonel Chun." We've received updated intelligence from the target location. The terrorists have moved up their timeline. They're threatening to begin executing hostages in 18 hours instead of the original 48. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What changed? We're not certain, but it appears they've detected some of our surveillance activities. They know we're planning something, and they're trying to force our hand before we're ready. Are we moving up the mission timeline? We have to. Your insertion is now scheduled for 0200 hours tomorrow night. I know that doesn't give you much time to prepare, but we're running out of options. After hanging up, Marcus sat on the edge of his narrow bed, holding the flight helmet that Peterson had prepared for him. Tomorrow night, he would find out whether 15 years of fixing cars had dulled the edge that had once made him one of America's most effective pilots, or whether some skills were too deeply ingrained to ever truly disappear. Outside his window, he could see the lights of Las Vegas glowing in the distance, a city built on calculated risks and the belief that sometimes the impossible bet paid off. Tomorrow night, 43 lives would depend on a mechanic from Barstow remembering how to be a warrior. Marcus woke at 0400 hours without an alarm, his internal clock still calibrated to military rhythms despite 15 years of civilian life. The pre-dawn darkness felt familiar, like countless other mornings when he had prepared for missions that would test every skill he possessed. The flight suit fit perfectly, Peterson's attention to detail evident in every adjustment. As Marcus moved through the pre-flight routine, muscle memory kicked in with startling clarity. His hands found switches and controls without conscious thought, decades of training overriding years of automotive work. Coffee. Major Williams appeared beside him, holding 2 steaming cups. She looked alert and focused, the kind of calm confidence that came with extensive combat experience. Thanks. Marcus accepted the coffee gratefully. How long have you been up? About an hour. I wanted to review the targeting data one more time. She settled beside him on a bench near the aircraft. Sir, can I ask you something? Shoot. What was it like, transitioning from this to civilian life? I mean, how do you go from flying Apaches to fixing cars? Marcus considered the question, watching technicians perform final checks on their aircraft. You tell yourself that you're ready for something different, something peaceful. And, for a while, that's enough. But there's always this part of you that misses the intensity, the sense that what you're doing really matters. Do you regret leaving the military? I thought I did for a long time. But, sitting here now, I think maybe I just needed to step away so I could come back when it really mattered. Marcus looked at her directly. Sarah, can I call you Sarah? Of course, sir. Tonight, if something goes wrong, if the situation goes sideways, I need you to trust your instincts. Don't wait for my orders if you see a better solution. We're partners in this, not just pilot and gunner. Major Williams nodded. Understood. And sir, for what it's worth, I've flown with some of the best pilots in the Army. Your reputation isn't based on outdated skills. Everything I've read suggests that what made you special was your ability to think through problems under pressure. That doesn't disappear just because you haven't been flying. The mission briefing at 0500 hours was crisp and professional. Updated satellite imagery showed terrorist positions, hostage locations, and the latest intelligence on their defensive capabilities. Marcus absorbed the information with the focused intensity he remembered from his active duty years. Weather conditions are optimal, reported the intelligence officer. Clear skies, minimal wind, temperature dropping to 58 degrees. Visibility unlimited. Enemy activity has decreased over the past 6 hours, added the surveillance specialist. They appear to be settling into a defensive posture, which suggests they're not expecting immediate action. Commander Rodriguez walked them through the timeline once more. Insertion at 0200 hours, fast rope to the roof. Breach the control room at 0205. Ground assault begins at 0209. Extraction no later than 0215. Total time on target, 13 minutes. Marcus had executed missions with tighter timelines, but never after 15 years away from combat flying. What's our abort criteria? If you encounter more resistance than expected during the roof breach, you have discretion to abort and extract immediately. If the ground assault is delayed or encounters unexpected resistance, we'll extend your time on target as needed. If communications are lost for more than 3 minutes, automatic extraction. It was thorough planning, with contingencies for most foreseeable complications. But Marcus knew that combat rarely followed the plan exactly, and success often depended on making split-second decisions with incomplete information. Chief Peterson appeared at Marcus's elbow. "Captain, your bird is ready. We've loaded the fast rope equipment, breaching charges, and emergency medical supplies. The aircraft is running at peak performance. Engine temperatures optimal, all systems green." "Thanks, Chief. What about communications?" "Full spectrum encryption, backup frequencies programmed, and emergency beacon if everything else fails. Major Williams has redundant systems, so even if your primary communications are damaged, you can still coordinate with ground forces through her." Marcus shook Peterson's hand, feeling the weight of history between them. "Chief, if this goes badly." "It won't, Captain. I've prepped your aircraft for impossible missions before, and you've always brought it home. Tonight won't be any different." At 0130 hours, Marcus and Major Williams walked toward their Apache. The aircraft looked lethal in the darkness, its angular lines and weapon systems designed for one purpose: controlled violence in support of American objectives. Marcus felt a familiar surge of confidence as he approached the machine that had been his partner through so many dangerous missions. "Pre-flight complete," called Sergeant Martinez. "All systems checked good, fuel at maximum, weapons loaded and safed." Marcus climbed into the pilot's seat, his hands automatically finding the controls as if he had flown yesterday instead of 15 years ago. The Apache's cockpit was cramped and utilitarian, every switch and display positioned for maximum efficiency rather than comfort. "Comms check," he said into his helmet microphone. Loud and clear, "Captain," came Major Williams's voice from the gunner's position below and in front of him. "All targeting systems online, defensive systems ready. Ground control, this is Apache 27, requesting clearance for departure." "Apache 27, you are cleared for departure. Winds calm, visibility unlimited, good hunting." The Apache lifted off with the smooth power that Marcus remembered, the twin-turbine engines providing enough thrust to make the aircraft feel weightless despite its considerable size and armament. As they climbed into the desert night, Marcus felt 15 years of civilian life fall away like discarded clothing. "Flight plan filed and activated," reported Major Williams. "Estimated time to target area, 47 minutes. The route to Creech Air Force Base took them through some of the most desolate terrain in Nevada, perfect for low-level flight that would keep them hidden from enemy surveillance." Marcus dropped the Apache to 100 feet above the desert floor, using natural terrain features to mask their approach. "Terrain following mode activated," he announced. "All external lights extinguished, emissions minimized." Flying at ultra-low level in darkness required absolute concentration. Every canyon, every ridge, every power line became a potential threat that had to be identified and avoided in split seconds. Marcus found his skills returning with startling clarity, his hands and feet making minute adjustments to keep the aircraft in perfect position. "Target area in sight," called Major Williams. "Range 12 miles, multiple heat signatures visible." Marcus could see Creech Air Force Base on the horizon, its scattered lights looking deceptively peaceful. Somewhere in those buildings, 43 hostages were waiting for rescue, while terrorists prepared to use American weapons against American targets. "Beginning final approach," Marcus announced. "All personnel, final systems check. Targeting systems optimal, weapons ready, communications clear," responded Major Williams. "Ground forces in position and ready," came the voice of the assault team leader over the radio. "Medical evacuation standing by," added the medevac controller. Marcus brought the Apache down to 50 feet, using the base's own buildings to mask their approach to the operations center. The terrorist guards wouldn't see them until the last possible moment, giving them crucial seconds of surprise. "Target building visual," reported Major Williams. "I can see defensive positions on the roof, at least 2 personnel with what appear to be automatic weapons." "Copy. Prepare for insertion." Marcus brought the Apache into a hover directly above the operations center, the aircraft's powerful rotors creating a hurricane of dust and debris that would further mask their activities. "Fast rope deployed, you are go for insertion." The descent was exactly as he remembered from countless training exercises and real-world missions. The rope burned through his gloved hands as he slid down 30 feet in less than 5 seconds, landing on the roof with knees bent to absorb the impact. Immediately, he could hear shouting from below. The terrorists had definitely detected their presence. He had perhaps 30 seconds before they organized a response to his unexpected arrival. The breaching charge was attached to the roof access door in 15 seconds, a shaped explosive designed to blast through steel and concrete without causing excessive damage to the surrounding structure. Marcus took cover behind an air conditioning unit and triggered the detonation. The explosion was controlled but devastating, removing the door and a significant portion of the surrounding frame in a shower of concrete and metal. Marcus moved through the smoking opening before the dust settled, his weapon ready and his night vision goggles turning the darkened interior into a green-tinged landscape of clearly defined shapes. The control room was exactly as the intelligence briefings had described, a large space filled with computer workstations and communication equipment, with the hostages zip-tied together in the center of the room. 3 terrorists were present, their attention divided between watching their prisoners and responding to the unexpected threat from above. Marcus's training took over completely. The first terrorist, armed with an AK-47, was turning toward the breach when Marcus put 2 rounds center mass. The second terrorist was reaching for a radio when Marcus engaged him with a controlled burst that dropped him immediately. The third terrorist, realizing the situation was hopeless, began to surrender. Control room secured, Marcus announced into his radio. 3 terrorists down, hostages secure, no friendly casualties. Copy, control room secured, came the response from the ground assault leader. Ground forces breaching now. The next 4 minutes felt like hours. Marcus moved among the hostages, cutting zip ties and checking for injuries while maintaining security on the room's other entrances. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building as ground forces engaged the remaining terrorists. Medical personnel moving to your location, announced the medevac controller. Hostages ready for evacuation? Negative on serious injuries, Marcus reported. All hostages ambulatory, ready for evacuation. The arrival of the ground forces was announced by the systematic sound of doors being breached throughout the building. Within minutes, the operations center was secured by a full team of special operations soldiers. Building secure, announced the assault team leader. All hostile personnel neutralized, all hostages accounted for. Marcus felt a familiar mixture of relief and adrenaline crash as the immediate danger passed. The mission had been successful, but the full implications wouldn't be clear until intelligence personnel could assess what damage the terrorists might have done to the drone control systems. Major Williams's voice crackled through his earpiece. Captain, ground control reports all objectives secured. Ready for extraction when you are. Copy, extraction in 5 minutes. All personnel prepare for departure. The fast rope extraction felt different from the insertion, less urgent, but still requiring precise timing and coordination. As Marcus climbed back into the Apache's cockpit, he felt the satisfaction that came with a mission accomplished successfully. The flight back to Nellis gave him time to process what had happened. For 13 minutes, he had been Captain Rodriguez again, using skills and instincts that had remained sharp despite 15 years of disuse. The transition from mechanic to warrior had been seamless, as if the intervening years had been merely an intermission rather than a fundamental change of identity. "How does it feel?" asked Major Williams as they approached Nellis for landing. "Like coming home," Marcus answered, surprised by the honesty in his own voice. The debriefing took place immediately upon landing, with intelligence officers eager to understand exactly what they had prevented. The terrorists had indeed been preparing to seize control of multiple drone aircraft for coordinated attacks on civilian targets across 3 states. Marcus's successful insertion had prevented what could have been the most devastating terrorist attack on American soil since September 11th. "The hostages are all safe," reported Colonel Chun. "No serious injuries, and initial interrogations suggest that we've captured the entire terrorist network responsible for the operation." Marcus sat in the debriefing room, still wearing his flight suit, feeling the weight of what they had accomplished. 43 people would go home to their families because he had remembered how to be a soldier. An unknown number of civilians would never know how close they had come to becoming victims of America's own weapons. "Captain Rodriguez," said Colonel Chin formally, "on behalf of the United States Army and the families of those hostages, thank you for your service. Both your past service and your willingness to answer the call when your country needed you again." The gratitude was sincere, but Marcus found himself thinking about something else entirely. For 15 years, he had convinced himself that his military service was behind him, that he had found peace and satisfaction in the quiet rhythms of civilian life. Tonight had proven that some aspects of identity ran too deep to ever truly disappear. As dawn broke over the Nevada desert, Marcus stood outside the hangar where Chief Peterson was supervising the post-flight maintenance on their Apache. The aircraft showed no signs of the night's activities, just another machine being prepared for its next mission. "So what now, Captain?" asked Peterson, approaching with a cup of coffee and the satisfied expression of someone whose work had contributed to a successful operation. Marcus accepted the coffee and considered the question. Yesterday morning, he had been Marcus Rodriguez, mechanic, content with his quiet life in Barstow. Tonight, he had been Captain Rodriguez, Apache pilot, saving lives and protecting his country from devastating attack. "I think," Marcus said slowly, "I need to figure out how to be both." 3 weeks later, Marcus Rodriguez reopened his garage in Barstow with a new sign in the window: Rodriguez Automotive, veteran-owned and operated. Most of his customers never noticed the addition, and those who did simply assumed he was honoring his past service. But twice a year, when the Army called, Marcus would close the garage for a few days and travel to wherever his particular combination of skills was needed. The people of Barstow continued to see him as their reliable mechanic, the man who fixed their cars with honest prices and dependable service. They never knew that their quiet neighbor was also Captain Rodriguez, the pilot who could be called upon when conventional solutions weren't enough, when the situation required someone willing to risk everything for people he had never met. In the end, Marcus discovered that he didn't have to choose between who he had been and who he had become. Some people are called to serve in times of crisis, and that calling doesn't disappear just because the uniform comes off. He had spent 15 years learning to be Marcus the mechanic, and one night remembering how to be Captain Rodriguez. Both identities were real, both were necessary, and both were him. The people of Barstow had their reliable mechanic. The Army had a pilot they could call when the impossible needed to be possible, and Marcus Rodriguez had found a way to honor both aspects of who he was. Sometimes, being just a mechanic was exactly what the world needed. And sometimes, the world needed someone who could pilot Apache helicopters into impossible situations and bring everyone home safely. Marcus Rodriguez was proud to be both.